I never thought I'd be the guy sitting here telling a story like this, but here I am. It all started a couple of months ago when my wife, Lisa, and I decided to get serious about our survival plans. We're pretty into prepping, food storage, emergency gear, bug-out plans. We've always joked that if the world ever goes south, we're set. But lately, Lisa's been acting weird, and I mean really off. At first, I thought maybe she was just stressed with work or something. She's a high-powered attorney, always on her phone, rushing around, snapping at me if I even glanced her way in the mornings. But then I started noticing things. Her phone disappearing for hours, her being secretive about her laptop, and her suddenly making excuses whenever I asked about her whereabouts or plans. It was subtle at first, but enough to make me suspicious. One night I decided to check her phone. She left it on the nightstand while she went to the bathroom, so I grabbed it when she wasn't looking. I know, it's invasive, but I was just desperate for some answers. I found messages from some guy named Mark, and what I read made my stomach drop. They weren't just friendly texts, they were flirtatious, sexual, and downright disgusting. I saw plans for secret meetups, talk about practicing survival techniques, and even some explicit photos. That was the first real sign that my wife was cheating on me, and it hit like a punch in the gut. I felt numb for a bit just staring at the screen. My mind raced. How long has this been going on? Who is this Mark? Why did she lie about everything? She always told me she was dedicated to our plans, our little family project, our future. And here she was, sneaking around practicing some kind of survival with another man while I was trying to build a life with her. The betrayal wasn't just about the affair. It was about her lying to my face, pretending to care about our future while she was secretly with someone else all along. I couldn't believe it. I felt rage boiling inside me, but also this crushing sense of sadness. How did we get here? I mean, I knew Lisa was a bit bitchy. She's sharp-tongued, can be pretty bitchy, especially when she does get her way. But I never thought she'd cheat, not with someone like Mark, who's supposedly an expert in all this emergency prep stuff. It's ironic, really. We were prepping for the end of civilization, and she was just practicing her own version of it with another guy. I kept thinking about how she'd look at me, her lips twisted into that smirk, lying about everything. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and honestly pretty furious. That night I didn't sleep. I stayed up staring at the ceiling, replaying everything I found out. I kept asking myself, how long has she been doing this? Was it just that night? Or had it been going on for weeks? I knew I had to confront her, but I had no idea how to even start. The biggest problem was that Lisa's the kind of woman who can lie with a straight face. She's bitchy, she's manipulative, and she's got a way of twisting things around so you end up questioning what you saw. But I couldn't ignore it anymore. I had proof, real proof, that she'd been cheating on me in the most terrible way possible, right under my nose. The next morning I woke up feeling like I'd been hit by a freight train. My head was heavy, and I was still reeling from everything I'd seen the night before. I kept going over that damn phone, over Mark's stupid messages and her lies. I knew I needed to confront her, but I wasn't sure how. Part of me wanted to scream at her, ask her how she could do this, but another part just wanted to disappear, to run away from the whole mess. She was already up, of course. Lisa's a morning person, always out of bed before dawn, making coffee and acting like everything's normal. She looked at me with that bitchy smile of hers, the one she uses when she wants to pretend she's innocent or when she's about to give me some bullshit excuse. I knew she'd see the tension in my face, she always did. And sure enough, she gave me that sarcastic look, like she knew I was onto her. I decided to be direct. I pulled her aside, told her I knew about her messages, about Mark. Her face twisted in a way that made me want to smash something. She denied everything, of course. "You're crazy," she snapped. "You're just jealous because you're too old for me, or maybe you're paranoid. That's all it is." She lied so smoothly I almost believed her for a second, but I'd read her texts, I'd seen her messages. The proof was in front of me. She started calling me names then. "You're insecure," she said. "You're controlling. Maybe if you weren't so paranoid, you'd see that I still love you, but I need my freedom, and Mark's just a buddy. We're just practicing survival techniques, like what we're supposed to do in a real emergency." That last part about practicing survival made me want to laugh and cry at the same time, Because honestly, that's what she told me when I caught her with her pants down, that it was just practice. But I knew better now. This wasn't practice. This was her living out some fantasy behind my back. I felt my stomach tighten. I wanted to believe her, to believe she was telling the truth. But deep down, I knew that lying had become her second nature. She's always been bitchy, always twisting things around, making herself the victim. I could see her trying to manipulate me into doubting myself, into thinking I was overreacting. But I was. I was furious, broken, and devastated all at once. I told her to pack her bags, that I didn't want to see her in the house anymore. She sneered, rolled her eyes, and stormed out, claiming she was done with my accusations. But I knew she was just trying to save face. That day, everything changed. I felt like I was walking around in a fog. My mind was racing, thinking about what this meant for us, for our future. I wasn't just hurt, I was pissed off. Pissed that Lisa could betray me like this, that she could lie so easily, and that she thought she could get away with it. I had to figure out what to do. Part of me wanted to confront her again, to demand answers. But another part just wanted to cut all ties and move on. I'd been blindsided, and honestly, I didn't know who I was anymore. This wasn't just about a cheating wife. It was about my whole sense of trust crumbling in a matter of hours. The days that followed were a blur of confusion and anger. I threw myself into work, trying to distract myself from the crushing weight of betrayal. But every night I replayed everything I'd found out, and the image of Lisa's smug, bitchy face haunted me. I kept thinking about Mark, what he looked like, what they'd been doing in those practice sessions for the end of civilization. I couldn't get the mental picture out of my head. Her lying on some makeshift bed, him behind her, her smirking like she was in control, like she was living her fantasy while I was supposed to be building our future. I knew I had to do something. I couldn't just let her get away with this. But I also knew she was manipulative, and she'd lie her way out of anything if I wasn't careful. That's when I decided I needed proof, real proof, that she'd been cheating even more than I had seen. I needed to show her that I wasn't just some fool who'd turn a blind eye. I started watching her more closely, following her at a distance, trying to catch her in the act. It was almost like a game, except I wasn't winning. Because no matter how much I watched, she was smart about hiding her tracks. One evening I noticed her sneaking out of the house late, her phone glued to her hand. I decided to follow her. She drove to some rundown apartment complex on the edge of town, an area I'd never been to before. I parked around the corner, watching her slip inside. My stomach clenched. What the hell was she doing? I waited, heart pounding, until I saw her come out an hour later, glance around nervously, and get into a car. I followed her at a distance, keeping my eyes on her. It was then that I realized she'd been meeting up with Mark again. The pieces clicked into place. I'd suspected she was seeing him more than just for survival practice. I felt like I'd been punched in the chest. All the anger resurged, hotter than ever. This wasn't just some fling, some innocent mistake. This was a pattern. She was hiding it, lying to my face about how loyal she was to me. I felt betrayed on every level. How could she do this? How could she pretend to be a good wife, a dedicated partner, while secretly sneaking around with some guy and practicing her own version of survival? It was like she was living in her own little world, completely detached from the reality of what she had done. I didn't confront her that night. Instead, I went home, sat in the dark, and thought about everything. I kept replaying the moments of her lying, her bitchy attitude, her sneers, the way she always spun things around to make herself look innocent. That's when I realized I'd been naive. For years, I'd tried to believe she was a good person underneath all that bitchiness, that maybe I could fix what was broken. But now it was clear she wasn't just bitchy, she was a liar and a cheat. And her idea of survival had nothing to do with natural disasters or global collapse. It was about her hiding her true self behind a mask, and I was just too blind to see it until now. I knew I had to decide what to do next. Part of me wanted to storm into her place, demand she confess everything, and end it once and for all. But another part, the one that was still holding onto some shred of hope, told me to step back and think. I couldn't keep running in circles, pretending I didn't know what was going on. I was furious, hurt, and deeply betrayed. I also realized I was angry at myself for not seeing it sooner, for not trusting my instincts. The truth hit me hard. I've been living with a woman who was capable of lying, cheating, and sneaking around behind my back, all while pretending to be committed to our plans. That night, I finally made the decision. I couldn't keep pretending. I couldn't keep living with someone who obviously didn't respect me or our relationship. I needed to get out, figure out what I really wanted, and rebuild my life without her. But I knew it wouldn't be easy. The betrayal was too deep, and the pain was still raw. Still, I had to face it head on. I wasn't going to be her fool anymore, and I certainly wasn't going to let her cheat and lie her way into the end of my world without consequences. The day I finally confronted Lisa was the day everything changed forever. I knew I couldn't keep going in circles, pretending everything was fine, pretending I did. See what I saw? I stayed up all night, gathering every piece of evidence I had, screenshots of the messages, her late-night disappearances, the times I followed her. I needed everything clear. I had to show her I wasn't some naive fool anymore. When she woke up that morning, I was already waiting in the living room with all her lies spread out on my laptop screen. Her face twisted into that bitchy sneer she always used when she thought she had the upper hand. "What's this?" She spat, trying to act innocent. I didn't bother playing her game. I just pointed at the screen and told her I knew about Mark, about her sneaking out, about everything. Her eyes flicked nervously, her bitchy attitude momentarily slipping. She lied, of course. "That's not what it looks like," she said, giving me her usual smirk as if I was some idiot who'd buy her bullshit. I told her I didn't want her lies anymore, that I'd seen enough. That her idea of survival was nothing but a sick joke while she was living out her fantasy with some guy. That I knew she'd been cheating on me for months, maybe longer. Her reaction, a mix of anger, denial, and rage. She started yelling, calling me paranoid, accusing me of invading her privacy, saying I was obsessed. "You're just jealous because I still look good and I still have options," she snapped, that bitchy tone back in full force. She said I was insecure and that she was tired of pretending to be perfect for me. I felt my blood boiling. All the pain, all the betrayal, all the quiet suffering over the past few weeks just exploded in that moment. I told her she could pack her shit and leave. That I was done trusting her, done pretending I didn't see her for what she was. She stormed past me, screaming about how I was ruining everything, how I'd never understand her need for freedom, that she didn't owe me anything anymore. I watched her go, feeling a strange mixture of relief and heartbreak. The woman I once loved, the woman I thought I knew, was gone, replaced by this cold, manipulative version who thought she could lie her way out of everything. That evening I sat alone, staring at the empty space where she used to be. I felt like a shell of myself. All the plans we'd made, all the dreams of surviving whatever was coming, had been shattered in a single moment. I kept asking myself, how did I miss all the signs? How did I not see that she was just pretending to be loyal? And the worst part, I kept wondering if I was ever really enough for her. If I had somehow failed her in some way that made her cheat, or if she just never cared and I was a fool for thinking I could change her. It was a brutal realization. I had loved her, yes, but I also saw her for what she truly was, a bitchy, manipulative woman who used me and lied to my face. I understood that I had to walk away. That staying would only mean more pain, more betrayal. I wanted to be free from her lies, from her toxicity. I knew I had to start rebuilding my life, even if it meant doing it alone. The trust in my marriage, the hope for some kind of future, was now just a pile of broken pieces. But deep down, I also knew it was time to except that I deserved better, someone who wouldn't cheat, lie, or manipulate their way through life. That day, I realized what true betrayal feels like, and I promised myself I wouldn't let anyone treat me that way again. After she left, I was left in the silence of the house. It was deafening. Everything was quiet except for my pounding head and the racing thoughts. I sat there, staring at the door she just exited, feeling numb but also somehow lighter in some twisted way. The rage that had been simmering inside me for weeks finally had a release. But underneath that, there was this deep, aching sadness. I had invested so much in her, my trust, my love, my future, and she'd thrown it all away for some reckless, bitchy affair with Mark. In the days that followed, I started doing what I should have done from the beginning. I took stock of what I really wanted. I reached out to a lawyer, started to figure out the logistics of separation. It wasn't just about the house or the money. It was about reclaiming my life and dignity. I realized I'd been living in some kind of denial, pretending everything was okay when clearly it was. I had to face the fact that Lisa had been lying to me, manipulating me, and worst of all, living her own version of survival at my expense. I also had to deal with the emotional fallout. I felt humiliated, betrayed, and angry, but I knew I couldn't let those feelings consume me. I kept remembering all the times she bitched at me, called me insecure, called me stupid for questioning her. Now I saw her for what she truly was, a selfish, manipulative woman who thought she could cheat her way out of her marriage and still keep her dignity. That realization made me more determined to move on. I started seeing a therapist honestly just to make sense of everything. It was painful to admit how much I'd loved her, how much I'd trusted her, only to find out she'd been living a lie. But talking helped, especially when I started to realize that I wasn't the problem. It was her. Her bitchy attitude, her lies, her affair, that was what had destroyed us. I learned to accept that I couldn't fix her, couldn't change her, and that I deserved someone who wouldn't cheat or lie. The hardest part wasn't the legal process or the logistics, it was the emotional cleanup. I had to disconnect from the woman I thought she was and accept the woman she became. I'd spent years building a future with her, and now I was starting all over again. It was terrifying but also freeing. I knew I'd survive this. I had to, because staying in a marriage with someone who lied and cheated would only keep me trapped in a cycle of pain. So I did what I promised myself. I moved out, got my own place, and started rebuilding. I cut off all contact with Lisa. At first I was angry, bitter even, but gradually that turned into resolve. I refused to let her ruin me. Instead, I focused on myself, on my job, my friends, and my future. I realized that sometimes the biggest act of survival isn't just about stockpiling food or preparing for the end of the world. It's about surviving the betrayal of someone you trusted with your heart. Now, I look back on all of this and I wonder how someone like Lisa could be so bitchy, so manipulative, so selfish. But I also know that I'm stronger than I thought. I learned that trust is something you have to earn, and once it's broken, it's almost impossible to get back. I'll never forget what she did, but I'm determined not to let it define me. I'm done being the naive husband who thought he was building a future with a good woman. Instead, I'm taking the lessons I learned and moving forward. Because if there's one thing this whole mess taught me, it's that no one, absolutely no one, is worth sacrificing your happiness or your peace of mind. Not even the bitchy wife who tried to ruin everything for her own selfish reasons. Looking back now, I realize how much this whole experience changed me. It's like I finally saw through the bullshit, the lies, the bitchy attitude that I had once mistaken for confidence. Lisa's betrayal was a brutal wake-up call, but it also forced me to reevaluate what I want from life and from the people I let into it. I won't lie. There are still days when I feel the sting of her deception, when I wonder how someone so close could turn out to be so selfish and manipulative. But those days are fewer and I focus on what I've regained, my peace, my dignity, and a renewed sense of self-worth. If I've learned anything, it's that no matter how much you love someone, you can't fix a person who refuses to see their own flaws. Lisa was never going to change, not after all the lies and manipulations. So I had to choose myself. I had to walk away from the chaos, the bitchiness, and the betrayal and rebuild from the ground up. That's what I did. I found new purpose in my work, reconnected with friends I'd neglected, and started doing things for me, things I'd forgotten I loved before I got caught up in her drama. I also learned that sometimes the best thing you can do for yourself is to let go of what you thought you had. Not everyone is meant to stay in your life forever. Not everyone is worth your trust or your love. I've come to accept that, and honestly, it's a relief. Because now I know what I deserve and I won't settle for less. Most importantly, I've come to realize that survival isn't just about stockpiling supplies or preparing for some apocalyptic event. Sometimes, the biggest survival skill is knowing when to walk away, when to cut your losses, and when to focus on healing. Lisa's betrayal might have been a blow, but it also ignited a fire inside me that I didn't know was there. A fire that's burning brighter now because I refuse to let her define my story anymore. So here I am, a little wiser, a little more cautious, but ultimately stronger. I'll never forget what she did, but I'm not going to let it ruin me. I'm going to keep moving forward, more resilient than ever. Because after everything, I finally understand that true survival isn't about prepping for the end of civilization. It's about surviving the end of a lie, the end of a betrayal, and emerging on the other side stronger than ever.